many petrol heads used to despise the word hybrid because earlier when the word hybrid came up, everybody would think about the Toyota Prius. But in the modern era, when I'm talking about hybrids, what you think about is things such as the Formula 1 car, the AMG 1 or the LaFerrari. Now, the car behind me is certainly not that, but what it is an introduction for the masses to enjoy the hybrid energy. Let me introduce you to the all-new Maruti Suzuki Grand Vitara. Simply a very important car for the Indian market, as it is going to be the introduction for many of you guys into the hybrid world. Let's begin. So talking about the overall design elements of the Grand Vitara, when you look at it as a whole, it certainly appeals to the masses because we love our SUVs and this has a nice macho stance to it. Talking about the overall front, you have a nice amount of cuts and creases, making it look really nice. The LED DRLs obviously stand out because they are split, and you have this nice, massive, imposing chrome grille, which certainly is going to attract eyeballs. Now moving on to the side, the first thing that you're going to notice is the 17-inch diamond cut alloy wheels and the fact that you have some nice plastic cladding on the wheels, which certainly make it look really macho, like I said, for the SUV stance. The overall shoulder line is very imposing as well, where you have a shoulder line all the way from the front till the side and the rear, and the doors have a nice amount of feel to it as well. What I must compliment is that the overall height is pretty decent as well, and it doesn't make it look like a compact SUV. It actually makes it look like a full-blown SUV. Now let's move on to the rear end of the Grand Vitara, because that is something that I really love. You have this entire panel of LED tail lights, which remind me of another vehicle, which starts with P and it's an SUV from C. Let me know in the comments below what you think it is. You have this nice Grand Vitara, that badging that goes all around, and you have the tail lights and you have these fog lights and the indicators that are moved to the side. Certainly make it looking really appealing, and it looks distinctive compared to its competition. Otherwise, yes, the car looks completely nice. It has a nice macho personality like I mentioned before. Now let's move inside. Step inside the Grand Vitara, and this is certainly a good place to be. Unlike most Marutis that we are used to, you don't really see a lot of hard plastics, but what you actually see is some nice soft touch leather and, more importantly, good trim pieces all around. Now I am currently in the hybrid variant, and this certainly has a lot of features on the inside. For instance, you have a completely digital driver's display, a 9-inch infotainment screen that is standard across all variants and offers wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and a lot more. A 360-degree camera is also available on all the variants, but on the hybrid you get a heads-up display as well. More importantly, on the hybrid you also get ventilated seats, a dedicated EV mode, and more importantly you get these nice bronze trim pieces that make it look really upmarket. Also, the seats actually have a nice amount of leather on them, and you can actually notice a nice stitch on the seats as well. Talking about the seats, I must complain about one aspect, is the fact that the seats are extremely narrow. I am seated comfortably, but I wish the seats were slightly more wider, which could be a slight problem for people traveling long distances. Now there is one thing I really have to mention about Maruti, is they would not give sunroofs on their cars before, but now they are giving sunroofs, and this is a massive sunroof. For instance, I have not seen a sunroof this big on any car, and I really hope that I don't see people coming out of this, because this is something more that you should enjoy than actually step out of. Now I am at the back seat of the Grand Vitara, and yes, the interior is an all black interior, but you don't feel really claustrophobic because of these large windows, and more importantly this panoramic sunroof that actually allows a lot of light and air to come inside. The only downside for the sunroof is, yes, while it is massive, it actually offers way too much light because the sheet that covers it, the sunshade actually, is not very thick and lets in a lot of light and heat. So I would recommend that anybody buying the car would want to tint their sunroof slightly. Or maybe Maruti should do that themselves. Now this seat is seated in my position and I'm 6 feet tall, but as you see, I have a decent amount, like not the best knee room, but I'm still pretty comfortable in the back. Plus, I can actually put my legs underneath the seat and make myself comfortable. When talking about the headroom, I have a decent amount of headroom, but that is slightly taken up by the sunroof that you have above, but that is very marginal. Plus, I can actually put these down and make myself really comfortable for the back. And I have a decent amount of lumbar support for the rear. I have a decent amount of thigh support as well. Plus, if I want, I can recline the seats slightly. So all in all, the overall rear seat is pretty decent. Now before we move to the boot, I want to show you something really interesting that Maruti is working on, and that is safety. It is taking its passenger safety really important now, and what you see here is a middle seat belt that can be placed like this and then pulled. So yeah, that means that all three passengers get seat belts at the back. That is really impressive, Maruti. What I have to my left is the Grand Vitara in its hybrid avatar, while this is the mild hybrid. If you notice, the boot space is slightly larger here compared to this because of the batteries. And more importantly, when you notice, the actual wheel goes here, while in this case, the wheel is stored underneath here because of the batteries again. So you notice that the overall boot space is reduced slightly in the hybrid, but you also have some storage here and some storage underneath, while over here, you mostly have your spare wheel underneath. So that is the boot capacity for both these vehicles. So we are now going to experience the all-wheel drive of the Grand Vitara, and I have Mr. Yogesh with me, who's going to take me on this journey and actually show me what this car is capable of.
The Maruti Suzuki Grand Vitara can be had with an all-wheel drive version as well, which is called All Grip by Maruti. It is available only in the mild hybrid avatar, and it is powered by the 1.5-liter engine. It has three driving modes: normal, sport and snow. Snow for when you are in low traction modes. You also have the option of a differential lock. What you see here is me actually putting the Grand Vitara through its paces, and I was impressed with its off-road capabilities for the car that it is. I am not expecting it to do too much, but for the course that Maruti had created, I was able to succeed in almost every single course. I was really impressed with the way the Grand Vitara handles on the off-road course, and nowhere did I experience any sort of grazing or the underbody touching. So all in all, it was a really good experience, and yes, I get the capabilities that the all-wheel drive has to offer.
Now let me talk about the hybrid that I'm driving first. This produces around 93 PS and 122 Nm of torque, while the electric motor produces around 59 bhp or 59 PS and 141 Nm of torque. Now at any given time, you can't really have both the engine and the electric motor sending power unless you are in different modes. For instance, you have two modes. You have an eco mode and you have a power mode. In the power mode, most of the power is sent directly to the wheels and it doesn't really conserve any battery. But when you are in eco mode and when you use regenerative braking or when you're slowing down, the batteries can actually be recharged using the braking energy itself. Nonetheless, let me talk about the overall driving dynamics of these cars. Now all three cars have the same set of suspension, same set of brakes, and I'm really impressed by the overall suspension and the handling capabilities of the Grand Vitara. This handles the road very well because I am on some nice curvy roads in Udaipur and I'm actually able to take these corners pretty well. The suspension is able to hold through most of the bad patches of road, and actually I'm able to corner pretty well. More importantly, the steering wheel feels very nice and weighty, and I'm actually able to use the steering wheel to determine where the wheels are when I want to take these corners, and I'm really going hard at it. The only thing that I find is that the brakes are adequate, where it has a decent amount of bite, but it isn't strong enough to really slow the car down because you have to mentally prepare yourself slightly before you're actually wanting to brake. With that, you also have the option of a B mode, which is regenerative braking, for those times when you're stuck in the city traffic and you actually don't want to keep using your accelerator and brake constantly. You can actually just use the accelerator to drive. Now, because of regenerative braking and because this is a hybrid entirely, you also have an EV mode which allows you to drive the car up till a certain distance in electric power only. But you need to have the battery charged to more than 80% to be able to do that. Even the slightest twitch of the accelerator switches on the motor itself. Now when I'm talking about the motor, now because of this eCVT gearbox, you have a lot of rubber band effect because it is a CVT after all. And more importantly, when you actually floor the throttle, you hear a lot of engine noise on the inside, which can be slightly annoying over long distances. But when you're gently cruising along like I am right now, you don't hear a lot of engine, and actually the gearbox and the engine combination feels pretty good. It has a sufficient amount of power, it has all of the things that you want. Now the one element that I've noticed Maruti working really hard on is the safety, because they were not really known to make the safest cars, but that is not the case anymore. Take for example this car. They have actually increased the overall structural safety to improve their overall safety of the vehicle. Also, you have all of these safety techs such as ABS, EBD, traction control, all of the things that you want in the car to make it more safe. And you also have a nice 3-point seat belt for the middle passenger in the rear seat. Now, after spending some time driving the fully hybrid version of the Grand Vitara, I now have the keys for the mild hybrid. And yes, this is powered by the same engine, but it has a different state of tune. For instance, this produces 103 PS and 137 Nm of torque, and it is powered by a 5-speed manual or a 6-speed automatic gearbox. I am currently driving the 5-speed manual, and I must say that yes, the engine feels very lethargic, but with this gearbox it is slightly better. I do have to struggle though between the gears because I am not able to get the most amount of power no matter what gear I'm in, and I'm usually having to be in second or in very occasional cases third to extract power for when I have to make those overtakes. Nonetheless, what I really am impressed is the gear ratios because they are nice and long, and the added bonus is the gears are extremely slick shifting and the clutch is extremely light, which means that when I'm driving in the city, the clutch feels light and won't really tire my leg when I'm in start-stop traffic. But if you ask me, even with the manual, this doesn't feel really sporty to drive. And yes, when you're high up in the rev range, you hear a lot of vehicle noise on the inside, engine noise on the inside to be particular. Also note the fact that the all-wheel drive versions are only available in the smart hybrids and not the full hybrids. With that being said, let me now drive the fully automatic gearbox of the mild hybrid. So what I am driving right now is the mild hybrid in its automatic variant, which gives me a 6-speed automatic gearbox and paddle shifters. Now I think there are not a lot of instances where you are actually gonna use the paddle shifters, because I must be really honest, this gearbox feels very lethargic. It doesn't have that grunt or that oomph. Now I'm not going to be daft like most people and say, yeah, I need performance, but I want the car to do what it's supposed to do pretty well. Now most of you folks are going to take this car out on the open roads and actually drive with passengers in the car. And I, for one, now I'm sitting alone and this gearbox is good, but the engine feels very lethargic. So I can only imagine this is going to get a lot worse when I have passengers in the car. Because when I'm trying to overtake, I'm really having to slam the throttle. Or for that matter, when I'm actually wanting to even cruise, it is not cruising as comfortably as I wanted to. There is a lot of engine noise that creeps in because you have to keep accelerating hard to even maintain decent speeds. That being said, this gearbox is the torque converter gearbox and it is pretty smooth, just like you would expect. The gear shifts are extremely slick, really nice, really comfortable, and actually complement well with the engine, but that is where I feel the engine can be slightly better. Other than that, the suspension, the brakes, the steering geometry, or for the matter, the weight of the steering wheel feels very nice. Brakes again, so-so, but all in all, it is a very good package, but what lets us down is the engine in general. That is somewhere where I feel Maruti should have made improvements, because I feel that most people wanting to buy this car, or for that matter, most people looking to buy a hybrid, are looking at fuel economy as one of their primary concerns. But when you're driving this car, you are actually not going to get a lot of fuel economy because you're using a lot more throttle, which simply means that you're using a lot more fuel to keep yourself going, which actually nullifies the entire point of you buying a hybrid in the first place, right? So if you ask me, for somebody who really wants to just cruise, relax, not drive fast at all, or for that matter, just enjoy their drives and is not very hard-footed, would enjoy this car. But anybody looking for even slightly more performance would have to look elsewhere. Now at the event, Maruti wanted me to experience every single variant of the Grand Vitara. Let it be the all-wheel drive, let it be the manual, the automatic or the hybrid. And you would be surprised that it was the hybrid that really caught my attention because it offered everything that I want. Let it be mileage, let it be the EV lifestyle, or let it be the performance that it has. Yes, I agree that the gearbox is not the best, but that can be compensated because as in all, the hybrid actually is a good package. More importantly, it has a feature of the large sunroof, which I loved. With that, I am expecting the pricing to be somewhere between the 15 to 18 lakh mark, which will certainly undercut the high riders marginally. If anybody is looking to buy their next car or actually want to move into the hybrid infrastructure, this is certainly a good option for you compared to the high rider. With that, thank you so much for watching. This is Yash Sunil signing off. Also, don't forget to like, share and subscribe.